Hi there, this is Panicle for Thomann Synthesizers. In this video, I'd like to show you our top 5 Eurorack modules of the year. It wasn't the easiest decision because there were so many fantastic modules to choose from. So let me show you one by one which ones we chose and why. So let's get started. Let's start with one of the newest Tiptop audio and Buchla modules, namely the sequential voltage source model 245T. Buchla always fascinated me a lot, and now there are more and more modules available in Eurorack format, and so far I really love those. The sequential voltage source is basically a sequencer, but with some very interesting twists, which I will show you in a minute. Over here is the pulsar section, which is a voltage controllable clock, and here is the main sequencer section, which has 4 rows with 5 steps each. First, we will need to patch the pulse out signal, which is the clock signal, into the multiple, because I will need copies of it for other modules like this low pass gate here too. Then we'll patch it into the advanced jack of the sequencer section, so it starts running as soon as I press play over here. Now let's take the output of the first row and patch it into the 1 volt per octave input of this oscillator. One of the features that I like a lot is that you can adjust the length of the pulse output easily with this knob here. Or, and now it's getting really interesting, you can use the next row to adjust the length of the pulse width. Next off, we have a knob with which we can adjust the internal time of the sequencer, meaning the speed of the internal clock. Or we can again use another row to adjust this parameter too. You can also shorten the sequence with these switches. Or send these single pulse outputs up here to trigger other modules like the repeats in of the mimeophone or the wave shape control input of the oscillator, for example. As you can see, it's extremely versatile and just very much fun to patch with. The next module in our top 5 list is Koszalin from Chaos Devices. It's a pretty rad module which is perfect for drastically changing the timbre of a sound and sound design in general. Koszalin is a stereo frequency shifter, not to be confused with a pitch shifter. A frequency shifter shifts each frequency of the input signal by an equal number of hertz. As the new frequencies are no longer multiples of the first frequency, the resulting audio signal is getting more and more inharmonic the more the frequencies drift apart. You can set 3 ranges from ±50, 500 and 5000 Hz with this switch, with higher values resulting in more atonal and drastic sounds. I especially like the results of frequency shifting combined with the feedback and FM options of Koszalin. With this knob you can feed the frequency shifted signal back into the input of the shifter and define the density with this knob to add unusual and phaser-like timbres to the sound. You can also frequency modulate the amount of frequency shift by patching a signal either into the linear FM input or this exponential FM input. You can create many interesting new timbres, from subtle to drastic, from the audio signal that you send into it. Next off, we have this beautiful module which is called Starlab. It's a module from Strymon and it has the most gorgeous reverb I've heard in a module so far. It can create lush and cinematic soundscapes and is also a great sound design tool with all the features it has on board. It has 3 reverb textures that you can choose from, namely sparse, dense and diffuse, as well as a shimmer effect, a filter, a harmonics and delay section, an internal LFO to modulate different parameters of the module with, and even more features which are simply too many to cover all here. It's one of my favorites in my system since I bought it earlier this year, and I can definitely recommend it. The mod Medusa module from Shakmat is the next module on our top 5 list. If you are currently looking for an LFO in your system, I can recommend this module, and I'll explain why. The mod Medusa is an LFO with 4 outputs which can be used to make polyrhythmic modulations. It delivers 4 correlated or independent output signals which are all synced to a master clock. You can choose between various sequence tables for your first output, as well as different modes, which determine how the other outputs behave in correlation to the sequence of the first output. And if that wasn't already enough, you can also change the shape and symmetry of the waveforms, which allow for a very detailed refinement of the modulation. All in all, it's a very musical and inspiring approach to modulating all sorts of parameters in your system. The Quasar module from Neuzeit Instruments is another highlight this year. It is the first 3D binaural Eurorack module on the market, and it's very much fun to use. But before we continue with this module, you will need to get your headphones, otherwise you won't hear the full effect of the binaural audio processing. So instead of listening to your Eurorack sound in mono or stereo, you can send it to Quasar and let it do its magic. It will process your audio signal into a spatial 3D sound that you can move around your head by changing its 3 dimensions: angle, height, and distance. You can edit those 3 dimensions manually in the menu, or you can modulate them with external control voltages or with the internal LFOs, which I like to use a lot. The interface is pretty straightforward, and the huge LED rings give you visual feedback on the levels of your audio signal or on what you're editing in the menu. All in all, Quasar is very intuitive to use, although it might seem very technical at first. It invites you to experiment and maybe even experience something new with your system. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you have any Eurorack highlights you would like to share, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to know what inspired you this year. So, bye!